Yeah, it seems like the first half you're seeing recovery growth picking up as well. Earnings are looking good. Does the second half carry the same kind of upbeat forecast? What do you make of it?
So the first half, as you correctly pointed out, is looking quite good, and results, net income has been up, call it 10 to 15%, in fact, 22% at China Merchants Bank. But the second half of the year does have some amount of cloudiness associated with it. A lot of the net income growth has been thanks to very strong loan growth. That's up 7 to 8% year to date. But if you were to take a step back, the authorities had actually wanted system loan growth to be about similar to last year. And last year, it was about 10 to 11%. So we anticipate a strong slowdown in loan growth in the second half of the year. You also have some amount of clouds as far as the economy is concerned, whether it's COVID-19, whether it's supply chain issues. And so that might affect the fee income to a certain extent. Non-performing loans have been quite good. Those ratios have been coming down, and credit costs have been coming down as well. But there are a number of other factors which are bubbling away in the background. There's been a huge focus on increased inclusive lending, and that is kind of going to portend for some kind of losses, no doubt, further down the line, because the banks aren't making any money on these kind of loans. There are concerns regarding the property sector. We have seen a big jump in the NPL ratio of ICBC's real estate loans. And that combined with what seems to be a greater comfort with the authorities on basically allowing some commercially run SOEs that have overextended themselves. All of this combined indicates that there are certainly some headwinds in the second half of the year.
Yeah. I was going to get to the point about the real estate sector and some of the exposure that these Chinese banks have to the real estate market in China, given the fact that you have these curbs, you have this Evergreen-led risks now. Do you think that these risks are systemic to the industry, and how do you think that's going to spill over to the banks?
So the authorities have been very clear that this is something that they'd like to manage. And at Creditsights, we put out a lot of real estate research, and the top names outside of Evergreen, the top 30 or so, seem to be doing okay. You've had the 3 red lines guidance come out from the authorities towards the end of last year, and everybody is very clear in their minds that this is something that they need to adhere to and move forward with. So if you see the results that have come out in the first half of the year, you've seen improvements in a number of these real estate companies. Evergreen comes into a slightly special category of a high amount of overextension. But there again, in case they are able to get more income from property sales and not buy any fresh land banks, then our models show that basically Evergreen should be okay as well. The concern comes for smaller real estate developers, mid-size and smaller real estate developers, and that's where the struggle is. And in this context, it's more the city-based banks and the regional banks which have a lot more of exposure to these names. They're the ones who are likely to be more affected. The larger names are pretty well diversified, so we have less of an issue there.
Okay, it's the smaller banks that are most at risk. Pramod, what role do you think the banks are going to play, though, if Evergreen does fail? Do you see them actually providing funding and chipping in that way, or are you expecting kind of significant loan losses?
Well, if there is a restructuring that takes place, I think we can look at the example of Caixa, which had a recovery value for bond investors of anywhere between 60 and 80% on the bonds. But if you were to look at the banks, then a lot of their loans would clearly be secured. And so we anticipate, well, some kind of an impact, but not a hugely material impact when it comes to the restructuring. We're quite sanguine about how the restructuring processes have taken place, the speed with which they've taken place. We've had the recent example of Peking Founder, where the restructuring has taken place at a faster extent than anticipated. So this portends well for any kind of future restructuring that may arise.